welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we'll hear from our guests as much about what made playing that game or games special, as we will get into the context of how and when they had these specific moments in their life. So it's a bit more of a biography podcast than a video game specific one, but trust me folks, we're going to be talking games, so you're in good company. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug on the show today, you'll be able to find that in a link in the show notes. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast catcher, perhaps Spotify, I feel like when I said that, now I sound like I don't know any other podcast apps, but wherever you're listening, if you scroll down and you want to follow, listen to a new podcast, follow a link to a Patreon, social media, there's links in the show notes. It's nice and neat. I prepared it for you, so feel free to find that. But without further ado, that'll do it for the show notes, and we'll finally introduce our guest for today's episode. So please welcome improviser and the host of Mandog Pod and Greatest Conversation Ever, Ryan Rosenberg.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being here, Ryan. And,
My treat.
The audio listeners, they're not going to get this treat, but those watching on YouTube are going to see that you got a backwards hat on. You are ready to rip. You feel very on theme for this episode already.
Dude, I'm in my gamer vibe right now. I'm going full indoor kid mode.
I love it. There was this is a total tangent. Kumail Nanjiani and Emily Gordon, they used to have a podcast back in the day called Indoor Kids, which I did not know that term, despite very much being a kid who I was very much of a hybrid, because I loved being outside, loved playing sports, goofing off, getting into trouble, but I also could hunker down in front of a TV for hours on end. Safe to say you never heard of this podcast?
Oh, no, I have. I loved that podcast. It was a lot of fun. And I was the same way. I was like a big team sports kid. Yeah. But then when I wasn't involved in team sports, I would mostly hang out by myself and play video games. So it was like the two extremes sort of like...
Yes.
Yeah. I wasn't out socializing just to socialize, but yeah, lots of sports and lots of games, I would say. Like on my street, we had a lot of kids that lived on my street, and they'd always be like, let's go out and play outside. And I'm like, yeah, let me just beat Super Mario 3 and then I'll be right out.
And then I'll see you. Yeah. That's so great. Thinking about that too makes me realize that depending on how and where I know someone, they might think of me as a completely different version than other people. I mean, There's the improv of it all, which is how you and I know each other, but a lot of people in the improv community probably think of me as like, oh, that's one of the improv video game guys, because it's half of, if not all of, what I post about. But if you were to know me from my adult baseball league, you might be like, that's a jock.
That's the guy who throws 90 miles an hour and hits a home run every time he comes up to plate.
Yeah, he really shouldn't be in this league if that's how well he's doing.
But I know you're an athlete. I see it. I know, and I see you. You're out there running. You're a big time real athlete. But it's funny. You're right. Like we do wear these different masks.
Absolutely, and I'm sure we're going to get into so much of that today. Ryan, I already previewed it a bit, but I know you, like I do the majority of the guests on this show, through the Los Angeles improv community. If I were to look back, I think I have a very pretty good specific memory about like dates and events and stuff generally, unless they're disparaging to my character, and then I can't remember them at all. But yeah, it's convenient for me how that works. But I've known you for at least 7, possibly 8 years, and kind of like some people on the show, I was aware of you before we got to know each other, just seeing you on Herald Night with the Dragons or with Big Grande performing, but got to know you throughout the years from like I would kind of describe it as like drips and drabs here and there.
Yes. At shows, after shows, before each other's shows, things like that.
Yes, some coaching, filling in like coaching for certain teams, socially when our circles would sort of intermix. But I know you as just like one of the greatest improvisers I've ever seen. Just a jolly soul to be around.
Oh, thank you.
But what do you want to share with yourself about the listener? We gave about the listener. What do you want to share with the listener about yourself?
Well, I think the listener at home has made a great choice to listen today, and they're a fantastic, smart group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think we've done a good job of building a nice friendship that didn't come on too fast, but it felt like it was building strength the whole time.
Yeah, we've just been slowly onboarding that in a very healthy manner.
There's always been good trust. It's always been a happy to see you kind of thing. And yeah, it feels like our lives are getting closer and closer the longer that we coexist. So it's very nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can go through, especially in the comedy community, and don't worry, the listeners won't be getting sick of hearing about that because they're used to it, 224 episodes in.
Okay, good.
But that can just happen where you just have seasons where you see people more often than not, or people who just sort of like leave your circle, or that you just like aren't crossing paths very often. But we've had to like echo what you said a little bit, a kind of a consistent drip and drab of those times. So, and are still, I feel like actually, I might even see you most consistently now because, whether it's you coaching on Herald Night or running into you more socially at other shows. But does that feel fair to you?
Yeah, I think so. And you're a NorCal boy as well, right? Aren't we both sort of NorCal boys?
That's right. Even in your show on Sunday, when maybe it was Drew who brought up Lady Bird, and I knew you were going to chime in with the Sacramento of it all, and sure enough, you did. Oh,
great place to be from. I'm wistful for all the time I spent there, and I think there's a nice little connection between you and I, because you're a Giants fan as well.
I am a Cardinals fan.
Yes.
But I am a Sacramento Kings fan, and I have a soft spot for all the NorCal sports teams, big time. Being from, because I'm Modesto. I want to say you're from Roseville.
Yep, Rockland, Roseville area. Yep.
Rockland, Roseville. Okay.
Who's your why the Cardinals?
My family is almost entirely from St. Louis.
Right. Okay.
This is more explanation than is needed. But my dad grew up also in Modesto, but had a very small, he was like an only child of an only child, not a lot of family. So when we would visit my family in the Midwest in nearby St. Louis, it was always such a special thing. We'd go to like, if we were there over the summer, we'd go to a game. It was just a good family bonding thing for sure.
So nice. Really nice.
Big time. But that's a little more about like our friendship. What do you like? Do you want to highlight? This is also not a bad time for plugs too, like anything about yourself or what you've been up to. Yeah,
I mean, I do a lot of comedy, improv and sketch comedy. I started mostly sort of the professional stuff with my group Big Grande. We had a sketch show at the UCB for a long time that was really fun and sort of helped us cut our teeth and figure out what we were doing. And then we started another podcast called The Teacher's Lounge that was out for a long time, and that was really fun and creative because we just play 4 characters that are like ridiculous teachers who are talking shit when the kids aren't around. So just an excuse to be like bitter old losers and kind of dig into like all the stuff we get pissed off about in real life, but then say it through the lens of these characters. And then also explore some of the darker sides of ourselves that we wouldn't want to say, things that somehow escape our memory, like you're saying, but are fun to put through a character maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the characters are hilarious. It's such a great show. I don't know if I mentioned this to you already, so apologies if it's coming up again. But over the summer, when I was back in Georgia with Amanda and Drew and whatnot, walking down the street in Savannah, someone stopped Drew and didn't recognize him from all the TV shows he was in, but was like, "Hey, you're Drew Tarver from Teacher's Lounge." And
so fun.
It was like, I feel like sometimes with those, I wonder, maybe this, I'm speculating, but sometimes getting recognized for like a passion project of yours that maybe isn't like an HBO show or whatever can feel really cool too, especially as like just me watching it. I was like, oh, someone recognizes how good that is.
Yeah. Definitely cool for me for sure.
Yeah, big time.
So yeah, like lots of comedy stuff. And I think growing up I played a ton of video games. I had a Nintendo 64, or like I had the regular Nintendo, of course. I used to play Atari at my daycare but didn't have it.
Oh my gosh.
Like just camp out in front of the TV screen while everyone else was playing and just like kind of freak out over like Dig Dug or whatever we were playing. But then, yeah, on Nintendo, it was like Super Mario 1, 2, and 3 I was obsessed with. I've played every minute of every one of those levels. World 5 in Super Mario 3 with the warp whistle, where it's like the big world, was one of my favorites.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's everybody's kind of notable favorite, but
it was
those
such a
were big.
standout.
Yeah, it's where they really went sort of artsy and creative. It was like, whoa, the world building.
Big time. It's funny, you've brought up a few things that like more connections to, because I was also a daycare kid up until, I don't know, age like 10, like kind of, I don't know if that's late or not, but I was also a daycare kid. You were talking about, and this is a tangent, so forgive me, but being a sports team kid, what were like your sports? Did you have a position you played? Like, I'd love a highlight.
I played most everything. I started playing t-ball and played third base. I was a right-handed hitter, and I usually batted like third, fourth, fifth in the lineup, so I had a big bat.
Big hitter.
Big hitter, but I was also very afraid of the ball, so it was sort of like feast or famine. Like,
okay.
It would either be like right where I needed it, and I would just swing my little heart out and usually get a big hit, or it would be like a little close, and I would just like back out of the box completely. So I would strike out a lot or get big hits generally, which was a funny I think my coaches were like, how are you scared of the ball and hit hard? We don't understand.
Yeah, the ball should be scared of you, Rosenberg.
Exactly. And then I played like AYSO soccer, and then played select soccer for a while, and did like a little traveling stuff.
Wow.
When I was a kid, my... not to brag too hard, but my sort of thing at my school was I was the fastest kid in school.
Oh my gosh, an absolute
fastest
runner.
Kid in school, and I was now I'm kind of tallish, like maybe 6'1" or maybe a little taller if I'm feeling it. But as
You're
a
feeling
kid,
like standing up straight.
yes. But I had a very late growth spurt, so I was like a short, fast kid.
Okay.
And so I could like run the bases like crazy, and I played like striker in soccer because I could just like kick it and then chase the ball and usually catch it and stuff. And then as I got older, I got more into basketball, and I played point guard.
Oh
and
my
my dad was
gosh.
my coach, and we were on a AAU team and like traveled and did tournaments in Sacramento and the Bay Area and stuff. And my sister was the real athlete in our family. She's my older sister, and she played on like the high school basketball team the summer before she even entered the high school. Like,
whoa.
Coming up through the local like rec leagues, it was like, whoa, who's this girl who's so good? And so they were like waiting for her to get to high school kind of. And anyway, she was like all section, and they won like North State something or other. And so I was kind of like in her shadow a little bit. So I was always trying to like just keep up with how good she was, which was very cool. But it was also frustrating when I didn't grow for a long time, because I was like, I'm never going to get to play.
Oh, I can imagine how frustrating that is. A big time, wanting to just be taller, especially in sports, when like height in most sports, especially like a basketball, is such a huge thing. I love hearing all of this. This is so good. I had a question. Oh, what high school did you go to? I wonder if I would know the name.
I went to Rockland High School. It was like
cool.
I think it was newish. I think it started in 93, and I was there from like 2000 to 2004.
Okay, great. Filling in some fun gaps for me.
Yes. Where did you go? Where was your high school?
I went to Thomas Downey High School.
Okay.
In Modesto.
Okay.
And there's also coincidentally a Downey High School down here in Long Beach that both Matt Apodaca and Iffy went to.
Right. Yeah.
So strange
Very
connections everywhere, but thank you for sort of entertaining me with the sports conversation. You know, it feels like we're circling both things so much today on this episode at the beginning, and barely even talked games, but that's something also that comes up a lot. I've done special like sports series over the summer. I used to do a Call Me By Your Ball Game series where we talk about like significant baseball games. So we've done that for a few summers. Anyway, is there anything else you wanted to share about yourself or plug before we move on to other parts of the show? I
guess even when I think about it, most of my game stuff is kind of sports related. Like I played mostly sports games, and like the stuff that I strayed from was like into board sports, like soccer, skateboarding and snowboarding stuff. But it was a lot of like Madden and FIFA and NBA 2K and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, before we, dive into a little deeper to that stuff for a little bit, I'd love for you to introduce the game you brought on for the main event later and call me by your game.
The game I brought today is Cool Borders 2 for the PlayStation 1.
Can't wait. So pumped to get into it. And just the excitement, it's just bubbling up. Rosenberg, let's get into your history. You kind of gave us a bit of a preview earlier, talking about playing the Atari at daycare and having, I think you said, an original Nintendo at home?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Duck Hunt, Super Mario 1, and then just a lot of like renting games from the local video store.
Yes. Would you... we had a similar thing growing up too, where like I never had a Super Nintendo, which is what I should have had at my age, but we had an original, and there was such a fascination I had about going to this like local secondhand game store and seeing like what they had. A lot of like, I talked to actually on Ali's episode, because Ali brought on Bart versus the World. I played like a Simpsons game, a lot of licensed stuff, and then the occasional sports game. Do you remember any specific like rentals on the NES that you had?
This was not a rental. That I owned this game because I think we rented it and then bought it. But my favorite game of all, well, my favorite game on the regular Nintendo, other than all the classic hits, which, are tough to replace, is Yo Noid. Have you ever played Yo Noid?
No, you got to tell me about this.
Dude, Yo Noid is the best game ever. You play as the Noid, which if you remember is a character from Pizza Hut.
Okay,
it was
cool.
like a Pizza Hut. It's like early Crash Bandicoot style. Like he's this, I think he's supposed to be, the little plastic table that is in the pizza so that the box doesn't close.
Big time.
I think he is like a physical embodiment of that thing. And he's called the Noid. I could be totally off on this, but this is the story that I was telling myself as a kid. But he bounces through this world and he has a yo-yo, and he like, instead of like hitting stuff with his head, he like hits stuff with his yo-yo,
Okay.
So it's like Mario-esque in that it's like a side-scrolling thing. But the art and the style and all, it's just crazy and specific, and the gameplay is so fun. It's like very simple, like jumping from thing to thing and trying to like, hit the bad guy with the yo-yo or whatever. But it feels like a little bit of a mix between like a Simpsons game and a Mario game, kind of.
This is amazing. I will say, after doing a Google search, I absolutely recognize Noid.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you where I saw it. Maybe on TV. Maybe I've seen a video of this game. That's amazing. There's something here.
There's all kind of secret Easter eggs in this game too, like secret little things that you only know from playing it 100 times, especially because it's not popular.
Yes.
So like I never know anybody who knows about this game, but I know every little nook and cranny.
Dang. This
I should have made this the game, to be honest.
You know what? But that's why we have this time up top where we're like, hey, anything we missed, we can talk about highlights. Yeah. It's exclamation point Noid, which just cracks me up. Because at first I was like, oh, is this a Spanish game? Like I Am Noid, which kind of makes sense, but that is so...
You gotta get it. Do you have like an emulator or anything? Like it seems like you would have that kind of thing with like 1,000 games or something.
I definitely have... I don't know if I have any emulators on my computer now, but I have like... They released an NES mini console.
Yes.
Do you remember that thing?
Yes.
Those are so easily hackable, and I have friends who have volunteered to help me with it. I just haven't taken the time, but I got to get Yo Noid on there.
Oh, dude, I will come over and play that with you all day.
That sounds like the best day of my gosh darn life. Wow, Yo Noid, what a niche topic for that. That's amazing.
It's so niche. It's so weird. I still don't even really, how like as a kid, you just sort of accept things and you don't really ask a ton of questions. Like you're curious, but you're not judgmental. So like there's all these things in this game that I still don't know what they are, but I know how you use them. Like you have to like hit a scroll and then the scroll opens and it's got a 3, like a Roman numeral 3, but sometimes you want the 2, but I don't really know what any of it means. I just sort of knew how to use it,
Yes. That makes sense, especially for a game of that era where unless you had like the manual, and even then sometimes that was unreliable as far as context, it was a mystery, or you were making up, kind of filling in the gaps yourself narratively or mechanically what was going on.
Like, what if this game has nothing to do with a Pizza Hut character at all? Like, what am I, just the craziest kid in the world?
Yeah,
I don't know. It could have nothing to do with that. I don't know why I even think that.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yonoid. I love that. So that's from like your sort of NES era.
This was like, home during the summer, and just like it was hot as hell in Sacramento, and just stay inside and play video games in my like nightshirt.
Yes, I love it. It's not coming off. You're wearing it through the morning, through the day.
All day, yes.
Were games, at least it sounds like it was more of like a solo activity for you, but correct me if I'm wrong. Were they something that you mostly did by yourself, or did you share them with people in like a multiplayer, or just like sitting next to a sibling and watching?
I would play like a lot with friends, where it was like you play until you die, or you play until you beat the level kind of thing, like just one turn. And I love doing that with like Super Mario or like Mario 64 or whatever. Once it got into like multiplayer gameplay, like GoldenEye and shit like that, like GoldenEye felt like the big first multiplayer in the same room kind of thing. My friends had it early on, like at their house, so they all got really good at it. And I came in second and would just get like blasted all the time. So I think it really turned me off from like those kinds of games. And so I never really stuck with games to get into the like online multiplayer thing. Like I never did Call of Duty, or even like what's it called, Fortnite, or anything like that. Like they just almost seemed too complicated for me. And I'm sure I would get them, you know, after a while, but it just is like, I think I do sort of like the solving the puzzle element a little bit more, and the like repetitiousness of trying to beat a level. Like I always enjoyed the story stuff more than the competitive stuff.
Yeah.
Even when I was playing sports games, I preferred to play against the computer rather than like against my friend, because it was like, no, I'm trying to like crack the code, not compete. Like I already compete out in real sports.
Yes.
This is more like to work my brain or something like that.
Yeah. And with, you know, a solo experience, you are able to enjoy it or improve or not at your own pace, rather than like, I think playing, especially like a competitive multiplayer game with someone or group of friends, you want to get to a proficiency level to be able to hang, and there's just more pressure, and it doesn't always feel like that's possible when you're trying to catch up, really.
I would go play at my friend Carson Norton's house, and he had two brothers. So it was like 3 professional GoldenEye players versus the biggest loser in the world. And it was like, we would play in their garage, and they had carpeted garage. And I just remember like we'd get so into it that we would all end up with like rug burns on our knees from like moving around looking at the TV and stuff. And it was like so fun. But I also just left like, can we just play fucking Tony Hawk, or, you know, something more normal?
Absolutely. Gosh, I just kids shifting around on a rug back when you mostly played sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
Gosh, that brings back memories. For you, being more of like a, you know, a preferred solo player, when you moved to the N64, and if you want to, by the way, if I'm ever skipping over stuff that you want to stop at, you pull the brakes.
I will say, you brought up Super Nintendo, which I got late in life because I had to have it, because I loved Super Mario or Super Mario World, right? It's like to me, one of the greatest games of all time. The hugeness of the world and the secret stuff you can do and the star level. It's just like so exciting as a kid. But I never really had Super, and the controller always kind of confused me, the like 4 buttons thing. So I was a Sega guy.
Oh.
So I had Sega, and I liked the 3 buttons, the black controller, and my favorite game on Sega was Shinobi. Did you ever play Shinobi? Yeah.
I'm familiar with Shinobi. Haven't touched it, but it might be one that's on the like. I happen to have like 4 of these mini consoles, including the first Genesis one that they released. But what do you remember liking about Shinobi?
Honestly, it was like the art and the style, like it, like you, when you did like special moves or whatever, like the clouds would lightning and the screen would go dark, and like it just felt kind of cinematic. It was like a side-scrolling thing, kind of like Super Mario, like same side-scrolling thing where you're trying to beat bad guys, but it also just felt like kind of real. It felt like cool Japanese ninja stuff that was like, whoa, this feels like almost adult or something like that, like dramatic. So the sort of epicness of the story I thought was really cool.
That's great. I feel like thinking back to that era, there's a lot of like cool, sort of like ninja samurais are obviously a totally different thing, but like that genre, especially like maybe it was of the time being that the Turtles were so popular and whatnot, that there was just such an opening for it. Because I missed like all of those games. I missed that. There's like Ninja Gaiden that was popular. But Shinobi, that's good. We're getting some good like name
specifically
drops today.
Shinobi 3, not to be they were all good, but Shinobi 3 is really, really great.
Awesome.
And then the other game that this makes me think of that just feels like that game a little bit, but earlier was Contra, which I can't believe I skipped over. A legendary game. Everybody knows about it. We probably don't need to talk about it, but man, Contra was fucking cool.
Yeah, we're talking like the NES shooter, like, right?
Yes. The big alien at the end who's like coming down from the ceiling. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I don't know how people ever beat those games, because they just, if I've ever picked one up or watched a video of one, it seems like an impossible task.
Totally. Well, with Contra, you had the Konami code or whatever.
That's true.
So that was, I mean, if you didn't have 99 rest, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's actually a feature, not a bug to play that game.
Yeah, exactly. 3 lives in that game is like, yeah, you'll never even beat the 3rd level. Like, no way.
Yeah, gosh. So, okay, NES kid, Super Nintendo controller's confusing. We got a Genesis, and then we moved to the N64 for you.
Yes, and that's when it
Another
got really
confusing,
big.
Weird controller.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the joystick. The joystick drove me crazy. I tried to play Mario 64, and I get in the water, and I can't steer at all. This joystick has got me going all over the place, up, down, left, right, and I cannot control it at all. I couldn't even like run around the world in a way that felt satisfying. It was so confusing to now be in a 3D world, I think, which was the big difference, right? Like, it was really confusing for my brain, and so I got really frustrated by that game. And then when I picked up Tony Hawk and some other games like that, I think that's when I really started to love the 64.
Yeah.
Oh, and NBA Showtime on NBC or something like that.
Yeah,
was an amazing basketball game that I loved on that.
That's not the one with Kobe on the cover on the N64, is it?
I don't think so. I think this one is like, it's weirdly like NBC branded. It's about it's like, yeah, I think it's called like NBA on NBC Showtime or something like that. But I remember you could customize characters, and like it was basically NBA Jam, you know, but like new and branded or something. But I created my own character that was a 7-foot tall green alien who had a hot spot right at the top of the key. So I would just like sprint down, do a spin move, and shoot from the top of the key every time I'd score like 150 points a game. It was crazy.
I love when games give the opportunity to just break them entirely.
Total cheat code. Yes, absolutely.
Gosh, and just having fun making your alien. That's so good.
That was great.
I love it. Were you someone that like continued to play consoles or have your own consoles after this period? Did you take a big break? Where did we go from here?
I took a pretty big break after, I think in high school, I was pretty late to get a PS2. Mm-hmm. I didn't even have a PlayStation, because I think PlayStation and N64 were kind of competing, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Time-wise. So I was an N64 guy, and then my friend Danny had a PlayStation 1, which is where I played Cool Borders. I would play it exclusively at his house.
Oh, cool.
But we did it like every day in the summer. He had a pool, and he had Cool Borders on PlayStation 1, and it would just be like an hour of each, back and forth like all day. It was so fun.
That's amazing. Okay. So eventually we got that PS2. Did you?
Yeah, PS2. What did I play on that? I guess I was playing I played Crazy Taxi.
Cool.
FIFA, Madden. You know, if you're a teenage boy, you got to play Madden, or else like you're socially in trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What else? I never really played baseball games that much. Mm-hmm. Even though I like baseball, I thought the games were kind of boring.
Sure.
Like I didn't have the patience for it, unless it was like Home Run Derby or something.
I mean, as someone who like obviously is a huge baseball fan and loves certain baseball games, I'm really picky with baseball games specifically. Like there were some popular franchises like All-Star Baseball and a few others that like I would never touch, because I was just like, nope, they don't do it right. So anytime someone's like, I didn't like baseball games, I totally get it. But
which one did you like? My
favorite series outside of the backyard baseball, like the computer games, the kids series, which I still ride for and is coming back soon, the MVP baseball series, which came out on like the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, and the PC in like 2003 was the first one. They had like 3 years of running this game, but I just felt like it hit the sweet spot for me of the middle point between arcade and simulation. Like, I love an arcade sports game like NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, but sometimes when I'm like, no, I want to like immerse myself a little more and like pretend like I'm running a team or being a player.
Right.
Some simulation games like MLB The Show goes way too far for me. So MVP, I felt like, split the difference perfectly.
Yeah, that's fun. That makes sense. Especially with baseball, because it's really kind of like a sport to be appreciated by adults. Because it's so like slow and it's like methodical, and like
totally.
You can't really play for 3 hours in one game.
Yeah.
Like you got to get through it, and that is a good art of like, you don't want to make it completely cartoony. Because I agree, like Blitz was fun until you've played it like 4 hours.
Yes.
Like, what am I going to do? Just keep assaulting these guys and not really have any fun?
Before and after the whistle.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, MVP was mine. Maybe like, I want to start to kind of catch us up to like the present day, but before, do you first, I guess where I'll start is, do you currently have a console? When was the last time you played a video game?
I have a PS4 right now, but
Nice.
It's not currently plugged in because I was a little too addicted to it during like pandemic stuff.
Oh yes.
So in a nice way, I was really enjoying it, but then I was like, nah, I'm trying to work a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, well, if I really want to play, I can plug it in. But if it's plugged in every day, I know I'll spend an hour and a half a day just like progressing my career a little bit more or something.
Yes.
And I also got really pissed off actually because the game I was playing FIFA and I was playing NBA 2K21, I think it was. And like really going for it. Created my own character with my face, like scanned my face, had Rosenberg on the jersey, and was like really going for the career mode on NBA 2K. But then when they put out, I think like not the following year, but like 2 years after, they like stopped supporting the game pretty much so that you buy the new one. And it like got rid of all my career stuff and like the ability to play career at all. I don't think it like deleted it, but it was like you can't add to it. It was just like, this mode is not really accessible anymore. And I was like, well, that's kind of the only thing I liked about the game, so give me my money back. Like it felt like they deleted a huge portion of the game pretty much. And so I kind of like soured on it, and then I was like, well, I'm not going to buy a new one knowing that they're just going to delete it in a year because I don't play enough to justify it. And so I was like, well, maybe I just put my energy elsewhere. But I do get the itch sometimes.
Yeah, that instance particularly frustrates me. Like, it's just part of our, the reality of the gaming landscape now, where so many games are like kind of like Fortnite. They're live service games. They're living, like they're always constantly updating. Some games, when they're out for a brief amount of time, is when they get their support, whether it's online or multiplayer stuff. And then of course, I get it. They've got a million 2K games. They're going to move on. But to have like just like the season mode or my 2K just become inaccessible really rubs me the wrong way.
I get that. It does make sense that like to actively support all that stuff, you have to employ a lot of people to like update all the players and update all the bullshit. So, but maybe it's just like, let me just play it forever at wherever you stopped. Like, don't update the players, but let me play through like a computer-made league for the next 5 years with no new drafts or something like that. I don't care.
They had been doing that for years before on older style games. Like, and they, in particular, like the MVP franchise, like if you play a franchise mode where you continue year after year, new like fake players get drafted every year. It fills out the league for you. So it's definitely possible.
And the guys that are getting older get like a little slower and whatever as the new guys come in. Yeah, that seems fair and normal. But I had a couple of really great seasons. I won some championships and, we're happy. So it's okay.
Okay. As long as you got those titles to your name.
Yeah.
That's really all that matters.
Banners are up in the rafters at Staples Center.
Huge.
I was on the Lakers, so.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I've got a couple more questions for you about your history with gaming before we head to break. And the first of which is, I know we've got our unplugged PS4 at home. Have you seen a game recently, and it doesn't have to be a brand new one, But has there been anything that's like caught your eye that you've wanted to maybe step out of your comfort zone and try at all, or been curious about?
Each time one of these new huge world games comes out that everybody talks about like crazy, like the one that jumps to mind is like Red Dead Redemption, or like now Baldur's Gate, or what was the ones from a few years ago? I don't know. What are some of the other big ones? Skyrim felt big.
Yeah, there's like Elden Ring. Maybe, and this is less of that style of game, but maybe like some of the big prestige Sony titles like God of War or Spider-Man.
Yes. Yeah, some of those have felt like almost like seeing a big movie that comes out. It's like, oh, so many people are talking about this. I'm kind of getting curious about it, but then it's like, I don't know if I want to sink 100 hours into something. Because I'm usually so frustrated in the first like 10 hours of a game like that because it's like kind of random. There's no like definite goals, you know? I think that's something I really like about a game is like a checklist that you can knock off. Like that's what I loved about Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I think it was 3 or probably 3. That's the one I played the most. Is it was just like, here's every level and here's the 10 goals and keep hitting this level till you get the goals. And then I started playing Tony Hawk. What was the one? I think it was like 8 or something where you just have to like skate around and find people to talk to that give you your assignments. And I'm like, what the fuck is this?
I think as early as 4, that becomes like how it works is like instead of dropping into a level and having your 10, you go to a level and talk to a specific person like you were saying. And they're like, hey, man, I dropped all my soda cans around here. Can you pick them up? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Which like is a fun thing to add in there. But I don't want to have to like play the game to find out the goal, sort of. Yeah.
This is, so at the end of the episode, like I was telling you, we got some game recommendations. A bonus rec for you is Tony Hawk 1+2 remake for the PlayStation 4.
Ooh, yes, I would love that.
They remade, I don't know if you remember seeing this, but in 2020 they came out with a remake of the first 2 games. And it's basically still lives in the format that you knew that you were attached to. So, and it's just like it was amazing. It was like one of my favorite games.
Did they update? Like, I feel like from 1 to 2 was when they invented or added the manual, right? So that you could like combo stuff. Like, did they put that into 1, or is 1 still as it was?
Yeah, so it's essentially like they built it from the ground up, but all of the other features like the manual, the revert that they brought in, maybe that was 3 or something. They included like all those quality of life upgrades.
That's amazing. It would be so cool to play those original levels with more ability.
Big time. I think.
Ooh,
I mean,
I gotta get it.
If you have
You're
nostalgia,
about to get me addicted to my PS4 again.
My plan has worked. I think you can probably get it for like $20 or cheaper. It's totally worth it, and then you can blow through it, put it down, and plug your PS4 again.
Totally.
But Tony Hawk 3 is my personal favorite one, so I was glad to hear you shout it out a little bit.
Legendary.
Yeah.
Every level is good. Like every single level is good. The high school is amazing. The freaking warehouse thing, just incredible.
I love it. Of course, the music as all those games always are great. It introduced. This is not uncommon. This is, I feel like, almost a universal thing, but it introduced me to genres and stuff that I would have never found myself as a kid.
I would have never heard ska before if I didn't play all these games.
Yeah, my parents weren't exactly putting on like Rancid or Goldfinger on the CD player.
Not at all. Oh, did you ever play Matt Mira's bike game?
I didn't, but I remember when they started coming out with the Tony Hawk likes. Yes.
I mean, yeah. What was the other one? The surfing. Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, which was actually kind of tight, but also very limited.
Yeah.
But kind of tight.
Those are so good. Well, last question for you before we hit break. Is there a game that you haven't brought up today that you would just be devastated if you didn't shout out in your history with games?
I'm sure. God, I'm sure. Because when you're in it, they're so important. You know, for me, I like binge and purge them. Like, I will play this game until it has somehow, like, I feel like I've touched every nook and cranny and crevice and then go, okay, I guess I did it. And then I'll find a new one. So I'm sure there are some that I will miss. But in the arcade, I usually get pretty obsessed with any sort of plane game. Like, what is that, like 1948 or something, where you're like a plane that's just flying around trying to blast everything.
Yeah, is that from like a first-person perspective? Is it more of a shoot 'em up where you're at the bottom of the screen moving around?
Bottom of the screen, but you can go up and down. You can move the plane anywhere, but it's just like, how big of a bullet can I get, and how many of these things can I destroy? And I was like, I get really obsessive.
Yes.
So like as a kid, I would just like go to a pizza place and be like this close from the screen, just like, just like looking for the hole.
Yes.
How do I get through the little hole to hit the thing? Like those games, even now, if I see one, I will like walk past a window front and like go in real quick if I have a quarter.
Yes.
That and Hydro Thunder. Do you ever play Hydro Thunder?
No, you got to tell me about it.
Hydro Thunder is basically Cruisin' USA, but for boats.
Oh, now we're talking.
Or Cruisin' the World. Cruisin' World, obviously, so much better than Cruisin' USA. But yeah, it's just boats and that, and you can like jump and get speed ups and power ups and stuff like that.
That's cool. That sounds like a bigger version of like Wave Race or something like that.
It's exactly that. Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you said, like how they Tony Hawkified a bunch of sports.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, cool. This is literally the same machine. It's got a wheel and it's got a thing here, but it's a boat on the screen instead of a car. Like, it's crazy.
That absolutely rules.
Yeah.
Hydro Thunder?
Hydro Thunder. Yeah, that's the little tag at the top.
We need to bring it back.
I can't believe you've never played it. It's in every pizza place.
I wonder if I saw the cabinet, if I'd be like, oh, I know Hydro Thunder.
Yeah, I think you would.
Okay. Well, I'll have to do some digging. But Rosenberg, thank you for sharing, a smattering of your history with gaming. This has already been so much fun. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll finally get into all things Cool Borders 2, so I'll see you on the other side.
All right.
Welcome back to Call Me by Your Game. Connor McCabe here, returning to continue hosting this episode with our guest, Ryan Rosenberg. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Connor.
Finally, we're going to get into the main event today, where we are going to talk about your time with Cool Borders 2. Before we do, like I told you before, I'm going to do some table setting to introduce this game to the listener. I feel like a lot of people our age probably know this game, but in case we got some young guns out there or whoever, I'm going to tell you about it, but jump in if you want to, Rosie.
Great.
Cool Borders 2, known as Cool Borders 2, Killing Session in Japan. First of all, that right there deserves its whole discussion. Cool Borders 2, Killing Session is a snowboarding video game developed by UEP Systems for the original PlayStation. The game builds upon its predecessor's features with the addition of trick competitions, computer-controlled competitors, and support for the PlayStation Link cable, allowing two-player, non-split screen multiplayer, so you could essentially hook up two PlayStations and use your own TV.
Yes, incredible. The original LAN party.
Truly. Whereas, like, when we talked about it, GoldenEye a bunch earlier, where that, like, I don't think there was any feature like that. You were playing on the same, like, 15-inch CRT TV and enjoying your, like, tiny square.
No looking, no screen looking,
Dude,
like all that stuff. Yeah.
Bring me back. Anyway, this is a tangent. I'm so sorry to do this during the table setting, but last year, around my birthday, I had people over to recreate a Halo LAN party, and so we had people in this room playing and then in another room. So it was kind of like we couldn't look at each other's screens, but you could hear the other people like either cheer or cry out in anger of getting killed.
That's awesome.
Just special time. The main aim of Cool Borders 2 remains to complete courses in the shortest time, aided this time around by shortcuts to perform the best scoring tricks and to rack up huge total scores. There are more unlockables and also the option to customize the snowboard's graphics, which is just anytime you can, like, I would do this a lot in like Animal Crossing. I'd like make like a Cardinals t-shirt. So I had like a little St. Louis thing, but is this a feature you messed with at all?
Yeah, that was definitely the part of it, was like, snowboarding at that time for me growing up was like kind of emerging, like the whole ESPN2
Yes.
Like what do they call it? Extreme sports was like a big thing when I grew up. Now it's just sports, but like when we were growing up, those skateboarding and snowboarding, I can't even believe I'm telling a story like this. I feel so old. This is how it happens, folks. Oh my God, that's so weird. But I remember them being like extreme sports, and it was just like they finally brought cameras to the mountains or whatever. So it was like just kind of a new vibe. Like it was like, oh, you could be a snowboarder, and it's like a new way to be an athlete for people who weren't really team sports people, I feel like.
Totally.
So it was like kind of punk and like, so I was definitely designing my character and being the coolest guy, because you couldn't really, at least for me, I was a little like goody two shoes boy.
Big time.
So I couldn't wear like, I couldn't be a punk or like tell my parents to fuck off or anything. So I think I would love to make these characters that were sort of like badass, because I was like a little sweetie.
You're kind of like almost like giving you an opportunity to like role play as like a little punk snowboarder.
I don't give a shit about my life. I'll jump off a mountain.
Yeah. And sorry, Mom and Dad. This game, a few more details about this game are that the game offers had 7 playable snowboarders and 18 pre-made snowboards to use, with 10 courses to compete in. An original advertisement for the game features Seth Romatelli of the comedy podcast Yeah Dude. Don't know what that's about.
Okay.
The PAL version of the game, which is basically a European version, was included as one of the 20 games preloaded onto the PlayStation Classic, which we talked about a bit earlier. That released in December 3rd, 2018. So that this is a franchise that I have very limited, if any, experience with, but because it's on the Classic, this is the one that I've played.
Yes, I see.
Are there any details you want to include about the game before we dive further into your time with it?
I just remember that it was like the first time you could like do snowboarding.
Yeah.
Like I was too young and scared of it in real life, so it was cool. And like I don't remember the racing as much. The thing that I really remember about it, and maybe this is too early for this, but was that there was like you could charge up your jump. So like you would get this huge long hill, but once you start charging, you can't turn.
Yes.
So like you would have to like set your route and then hold down jump and then get to the end of the ramp and let it go at the perfect time to get like the biggest spin and jump and whatever. And I feel like I spent a year of my life going off of this one jump that had the longest lead up so that I could get the biggest power up or whatever. That's like almost exclusively what I remember about this game, was trying to get the biggest jump so that you could do the biggest trick.
Yes, that seems, this series obviously is very influential on the snowboarding games to come, and I feel like that is just something I come to expect with snowboarding games. Granted, my experiences is pretty limited. We talked about Tricky before we started recording, but like the SSX series absolutely adopted that, and so I know that too. If I'm going down a mountain and I want to jump, you can hold that jump button, but if you're not going in the direction of a ramp, you're in trouble.
And then to reset it, you're going to do this weird little jump that's going to throw you off because you do this little like half jump because you didn't want to or whatever.
Yes, big time.
It's a big choice.
So I previewed this earlier, but I believe you said that you had played PlayStation at your friend Danny's house, and this is where you played that game.
Yes. I think maybe
awesome.
That's why it made it such a treat for me, is because I didn't have it. So it would be, how like if your friend has a pool table, you love it.
Big
but
time.
then like I got a pool table and I got so tired of it so quickly.
Yes.
So I think maybe part of it is just that it was like, oh, I get to go over to Danny's house, and it just felt like a little vacation but in town or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I had the same thing. I bring up my childhood best friend all the time. His name was Eddie, and very similar thing where he and his brothers, we had some crossover. Like I had an N64, so did they, but they had like a Dreamcast, a PlayStation 2, all this stuff that like I would also just sort of like salivate over and want to go to their place to like play these games. And I think a similar thing happens between, longing for a game that your friend has that you maybe played for 5 minutes and remembering games from your childhood, is that I always it's not that they were always worse than what I remember.
Right.
But I tended to like build them up in my head. I don't know if this is relatable for you at all.
Yeah, 100%. Like I went back and watched some YouTube videos because you asked me about what game and I was like, oh, Cool Borders 2 immediately. It's just like such a nostalgic, fun thing for me. Then I went back and watched some YouTube videos and I was like, what even is this? Like, this is the most boring game I've ever seen. The graphics are like so chunky and weird.
Yeah.
But back then it felt so cool. But it's almost just, I remembered it being more about tricks. And it didn't really have as many tricks and things. I think it was just that it taught you about tricks, and it was like you could do a stiffy.
Yeah,
you could do a whatever.
You could grab your board.
Yeah, you could do a 360 spin. So I think Cool Borders like really got me into the genre, but then as soon as I got the N64 and played 1080 snowboarding, that's what I really continued it. Because like almost the same game, but just felt like the advantage of like 2 huge years of technology upgrade, like
big time,
going from the very beginning to like where we actually end up. And it was, I love that game too.
That's amazing. I definitely want to hear more about that and like the trail that followed. When it comes to your friend, Danny, did you know each other from school? Was this a neighborhood friend?
Yeah, we were like school and sports. We both played baseball together and played, later would play football in the same sort of program. But yeah, we played primarily baseball together. He was a catcher and I was a pitcher.
Oh, wow.
And we both played on the all-star team as 10-year-olds and then again as 12-year-olds. So it was like, and he was just very cool. He was like a cool kid. And so I just, it was like, and I think we were just both very free in the summer. Maybe like his mom was home and so she would always cook, or so it was like a great house to hang out at the summer because they had a pool, a bunch of food and video games. And so I was like, and he had an older brother, which always felt kind of cool of like, oh yeah, like older brothers are cool. I had an older sister, which was very cool, but wanting an older brother is like also a thing.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like, whoa, he's like us, but like smarter and cooler.
Yeah. He might talk to girls sometimes.
Yeah. He really does sports good. We're just okay.
Yeah. Oh, just, like, not to make it about myself too much, but all those things were like kind of the case with my best friend. Was like his mom was a teacher, so she was off over the summer. So that was part of the appeal, was like, oh, if I went over to Eddie's house during the day, over like any day over the summer, was like, she's making mac and cheese. We're hopping in that pool. Older brother Alex is, maybe being a little gruff towards us, but doesn't mind us hanging out.
Yeah, 100%. I was definitely hanging out. Like, my parents were divorced, and each of my houses was like nice and fine. But when they were at work, it was just me hanging out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or me and my sister, but she'd be off with her friends. So I feel like we would both either have a bunch of people come over to our house because it was kind of unsupervised. And at my dad's, we would like play pool and like watch the big TV and stuff like that. He just had kind of like a bachelor pad thing going on.
Nice.
And then at my mom's house, we could like actually sleep comfortably and she would cook food and stuff, but it wasn't like as fun, or like as much of like a advertisement for a teenager. But at my dad's house was where we really had the video games and would just sort of like, he would leave us alone, we'd play forever, and that was a cool thing.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Sort of like each had their sort of benefit or their strength.
Yes. Yes.
That checks out. That's so good. You had, like, when it comes to spending time over at like Danny's, do you have any broad or specific memories? Like whether it was like, it could be game related, also could just be like hijinks you got into, or just like, oh no, it was more of a general thing.
It was just like general vibe. What I really remember is that like he and my friend Carson were both in like bike riding distance from my dad's house. And so they both lived sort of like in my dad's neighborhood. And so every day in the summer we would just sort of like call each other in the morning and be like, whose house are we hanging out at? Or are we like gonna ride our bikes to Bel Air and get 25-cent sodas? Like, what are we doing? Like, we had a very small kind of safe little suburban town that we were pretty like unsupervised in, but we didn't really do anything crazy. It was just like riding our bikes, a half a mile to each other's house or to the store.
Yes.
But it was just a lot of that, of like feeling not unsupervised, but just sort of like allowed to hang out. And I think those times I really remember loving, because I was kind of like alone at home so much.
Yeah.
So it would always be like going to find my friends and then whatever we're doing. So I would hang out at my friends who had like older brothers or more of like a family system going on. And like those were the places that also usually had like the pool and the video games and the cool stuff. You know, they're like serving a big family. So they have candy around and they have all this other shit. My dad's house, like if he hadn't gone shopping, he would just have like 2 things in the cupboard until, oh yeah, it's my week with the kid, I gotta grab more stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's partly that.
That makes a lot of sense. I wonder too, for you, like if you can speak on it at all. Like I happen to be a person who, like, I kind of recharge alone. I wouldn't describe myself as like an introvert, but I recharge alone, but I love going and spending time with people. It's probably a very common thing. But for you, do you look back on that and you're like, oh, I still sort of have some of those, like, some of those things still ring true for you of like, 100%. Well, I don't mind my alone time, but I like to go seek out, I don't know, community, I guess?
It's exactly the same. Like I do like to have my house with the lock on the door and be like, okay, bye. And just sort of like disappear for a while. That helps me mentally recharge. And then when I'm out, I find myself being very social, but my battery runs out quickly. And so I think like I have somewhat of a Mr. Jekyll and Hyde thing of like, sometimes you catch me and I'm the most bubbly, happy, fun person ever. And then sometimes you're like, whoa, are you having the worst day of your life? Like what's going on? But I think it's because when I am happy, I'm sort of like I'm effusive about it. And then when I'm not, I go so inward. So I think like the swings can seem bigger from the outside than they feel to me on the inside. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of fine either way, but if I'm tired, I just sort of go inward and get quiet.
Yeah.
So I think the video games were good for that, of like a good way to still feel stimulated and have fun, but also not need to like smile for anyone and like be social. Like that was really helpful to be able to have fun alone, I think was a thing I needed and still do. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially talking about how like you're still mostly still and in the past are mostly like a solo gamer. That's generally where I fall too. I'll hit like a streak where I'm like, oh, we're all playing Fall Guys and I love picking up something easy to dick around and maybe be social, but it is mostly like a solitary thing for me.
It's like doing a puzzle or a crossword or like it's that kind of thing for me where it's sort of like, I don't know, let me just tinker around for a while. I need something to do, but I'm not necessarily looking to like go party. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Got a couple things I want to ask you about too as we continue through this part is first of all, I would love you to sort of put us in whatever space where Danny's PlayStation was hooked up. Can you scene paint this room for me?
100%.
I love it.
You walk into Danny's house, and first of all, it had the same layout as my dad's house.
Okay.
Because we lived in like a planned suburb or whatever. So there's like 5 different model houses on every street, and it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, so you have several friends who are like, oh, your house is like mine, but you have a brick fireplace instead of just wood there or whatever. Yeah. So you would walk in and then they had like big, thick curtains on their windows. So it was always kind of dark in their house, I think, to keep it cool, which was nice. And then you take a left down the hall where you go into Danny's room, which was also my room in my dad's house. The younger brother, I think the youngest brother room is probably what it was. And then my older sister and his older brother had the room next door. And then the other room was the parents' room. But Danny had a PlayStation in his room. So we could really just like hole up in there and it wasn't in anybody's way and it was easy. And so I would just like get there. His dad also cooked really good bacon. That was the thing I remembered.
All right.
So we'd go straight from having some bacon, run into Danny's room and play some, Cool Borders 2, or what else do we play over there? I feel like, maybe Blitz, like early Blitz was around that time. Maybe not.
I think it was, yeah.
But yeah, a lot of that stuff. A lot, and then we would also like play baseball and stuff in real life. So we would like go outside and play pickle in the backyard. And he had a dog who would like drink from his pool. So we would like yell at the dog not to do that a lot. It just felt like like a really safe, fun place to hang out, and like it had no rules, but we weren't really trying to break rules. That was what was so nice about it. It just felt like sort of freedom to have fun and be a kid, you know, which was really cool. And having the PlayStation in his room, I think, felt really adult to me, like having a TV in his room. One year I asked for a TV for my room at my dad's house for Christmas. I was like, I need a TV for this N64. You don't want me playing this downstairs.
Yeah.
And then
here's why it's good
like,
for you.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted it so, but my dad's house was so funny. Like he's so interested in like the coolness of it rather than like the family homeness of it. So my room essentially just turned into like a living room. Like I was like, I want a futon and a TV. And I hated, the futon was great because it's like having a couch in your room. So I would sit on that couch and play video games all the time, but I hated to sleep on it. It was so uncomfortable as a bed. But I was like, yeah, I want this fucking video games in here. I don't care. So, yeah, I think maybe that's the other reason I was over at Danny's all the time, was that my house was less comfortable.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, we would just go over there and play video games all fucking day. And then he lived closer to the grocery store / Taco Bell, Blockbuster than I did. So we'd usually like go to his house. And then if we were really feeling it, we'd hop on our bikes and go down and like rent a game or eat at Chubby's or, you know, whatever. Chubby's was a great little diner in our town. Yeah.
So many options. It's just like so reminiscent to me of, like that sort of like first stroke of freedom almost that you have as like kids getting not quite teenagers, but like approaching that, or maybe in your case you were a teen at this point. But yeah, it's such an exciting time. I feel like
video games were one of the first things that I was like interested in that my parents didn't have to help me with. Like once they bought you the console, they kind of have no interest at all in it. And so you're like, yeah, like this is my own little, you don't even know about this. And I got my whole little world in here, you know, like, so that was fun because you could just, even like I have 3 nieces right now. And like every time they want to do something like watch TV or whatever, they have to like ask or I don't know, their parents have to set it up for them or whatever. But then when they go play, they have a PlayStation upstairs. They go play PlayStation. They're just gone for 2 hours and everybody's happy. Like it's a very interesting, like, as a kid, you don't have any like agency or control. And video games are that for me, of like getting to manipulate this little world and figure out the puzzle and achieve a little thing. I don't know.
That's so relatable. I still feel like that in some weird way can still ring true for me today in some ways, especially as we're like, you know, everyone's figuring out their lives, trying to have, you know, successful careers in the entertainment industry. It's like sometimes it is nice just to be like, you know what I do have agency over is I can deliver this package in Death Stranding and someone will give me a thumbs up for doing it.
Yeah, totally.
Did you... Thank you for doing all that scene painting for me, by the way. You went above and beyond.
What a treat.
Did you had mentioned earlier that like Cool Borders 2 had sort of tied in even more so with future snowboarding games like 1080 and Tricky. Did you have any highlighting of those you wanted to do while we're here?
1080 was a real game changer for me because it felt like a cool game that I liked, but you could also like customize it. Like if you beat a level or something like that, you could get the like copper snowboarder, and then if you beat another one, you could get like the silver snowboarder, and it was just like a cool little secret thing. And then if you put in some code, you could snowboard as a guy with a panda head. You remember that? You could like just be this big panda. And this one I felt like was when it started to go from like a downhill racing game to like Tony Hawk. Like, it was all about like doing jumps and tricks, and you could like, the longer you held your trick, the more the like points would sort of like count up as you were doing the trick. So you'd see like how long you could hold it before you land it to like get the max stuff. So I feel like it was the first thing that sort of added those challenges that made it more like tricks and points than it was just like doing a fun activity, if that makes sense. Like just more customizable and more like story elements, and then just the graphics. Like it was so cool to like snowboard and all, because you know, when do you go snowboarding? Once a year ever? I've probably been 10 times in my whole life, or 15 or whatever. And so every time you get to go through one of those just like settings of like going down the mountain and all that, like once the graphics started getting good, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I relate to that too. I played did you ever play SSX3, the follow-up to Tricky? Yes. Oh yeah. That one might actually be my personal favorite snowboarding game, and I played it a ton last winter, and it was I had a similar feeling where I haven't snowboarded, Ryan, in like 13, 14 years, but being able to turn on my GameCube and sort of feel like I'm on a mountain again snowboarding was so much fun. It's almost, maybe because it is something that feels close to reality, but not... It's not like I'm in a Star Wars game, or you know, remembering the last time I was in an X-wing, which has never happened. Right. There's something cool about getting to sort of live out that like fantasy that's not too far from reality. Almost. It's kind of, I mean, it's weird
not that different from like NBA 2K or FIFA or Madden, where you're like, I'm one of the athletes. It's like, you're just one of the extreme athletes, and you're getting to sort of like live that life. Like when you're doing it, like you're looking at the TV, but in my mind, I am the guy in the TV.
Big time.
You know what I mean? And you're like, you really are suspending your disbelief in that way. So that always felt really like a fun way to do a thing that is so expensive and hard to do. Like from my house, you had to drive 2-ish hours to Tahoe and spend, I don't know, $300 of my parents' money just to like start. Yes. And so that wasn't happening often, you know, so it was a cool little bit of like escape and fantasy, which I think is what a lot of them are.
Yeah, I just relate to that a lot. That's great.
Well, I want to come over and play SSX 3, I guess.
I have that and Tricky, and I would be happy to do that at some point. I've got, like, you might be able to see it over here. I'll move my camera. I have an old CRT TV there that I use for all this stuff. So... anytime. That would be great.
Cool. Hell yeah.
The last two things for you is that is there anything about, you know, around the cool borders to / that time of your life that you haven't mentioned today, whether it's a little detail or something that you want to get out before we wrap this up?
What would that be? I guess one thing that was just a disappointment that comes up is I was telling you about riding bikes to my friend's house.
Yes.
We would play video games. We would do a lot of like basketball in the backyard, a lot of like weird garage activities. We would play knee basketball in the garage, again, like burning our knees like crazy. He had 2 little Fisher Price hoops.
Cool. Yeah.
And it would be like me and one of his brothers versus him and his other brother, and we'd play like knee basketball, like basically NBA Jam with 2-on-2, but like on our knees on carpet. And I would just go home with like literally scabbed up knees from the rug burns. But one time when I went over to his house, I rode my bike over there and put my bike in the backyard, and I just got this brand new awesome Royce Union bike with pegs. We were like, pegs. Yeah, dude, I'm going to drive my friend around. You're going to ride on the pegs, and I'll be driving. We'll go to the store. Our biggest dream was to go to the grocery store. like that's my childhood, was just to go to the grocery store and like get a soda alone without parents was like the big thing. But someone stole my fucking bike out of his backyard while we were in the garage.
No.
Either playing GoldenEye or knee basketball, whichever one it was. And that was so sad because it was like also a connection to those guys and to that life, you know, like I didn't want to walk to their house when it's 105 degrees in the summer, but like a quick little bike ride is fine. So that was a bummer. And then the one other thing that it's bringing up all this nostalgia.
Yes. It's going to happen to you for probably the next like 24 hours. You're going to be like, wait. This.
Yes, totally. The other thing that we did was we bought a set of like home-based laser tag. Did you ever see those things where you could like buy the little like chest plate and a gun?
I had like one friend who had a set like that.
Yes, and so it was perfect because again, like a house full of 3 boys and then me, and we just play like 2-on-2 laser tag at their house.
Oh.
If we wanted a real version of the GoldenEye shit we were doing, and that was also like, even though it was so janky, it was really cool.
That's awesome. Just all those little memories are so rich, and they really like help sort of like paint this canvas almost of this time you had. And speaking of which, before we move on to the post-show segments and wrap up, would you do me a favor and just, as best as you can, wrap up this sort of time or place that Cool Borders / this era like was for you?
I think this was an era of like the first bit of feeling like independent and like an adult, and also starting to feel cool. Like as a kid, I was like, again, like just wanted to please my parents and make them both feel like everything's going good. You got a good kid. But then like Cool Borders and sort of I was probably like, from 10 to 13 or something, 10 to 12-ish. And it was like, the first feeling of that independence, of feeling like a cool adult, even though we totally were not adults. Yeah. You think you are because you're like out alone and all that shit. So it was definitely just a cool time of like, feeling independent, feeling like I had this new sense of control, and feeling like, oh, I know what I like. Yeah. I like Cool Borders. I'm a cool kid. I'm cool, man. Like, I think it was just like a little bit of that coming into my own in terms of like personality stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I played team sports and my dad was a coach, and so like that was a big part of it, is like fitting in. But then this was sort of like the first time I was able to be like, well, what do I want to do? Yeah. Just for my own cool I guess I want to be a cool snowboarder. I really wanted to be a surfer because I was born in Southern California, but then grew up in Northern California. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm a SoCal guy. I wear puka shells and I have a rash guard. So, I know how to surf.
I still have that cultural loyalty down there. Was it, is it San Diego for you?
I was born in Long Beach. Long Beach. So just a little south of LA. But a bunch of my family is in San Diego. And now my mom and my sister live down there. So
that might be, that might be what I'm pulling from, is you telling me that one time.
Yes. Yeah. Now we're all kind of, I'm the furthest north, basically, in our little circle. And my dad's in Long Beach, and my mom's sister and aunt and uncle and all of them are down in San Diego. So
gotcha. Well, awesome.
We're back, baby. I am a surfer. I'm the surfer I always wanted to be.
Hey, we full circle here. I love it. Well, we'll do a couple fun things to close out, but Ryan, thank you so much for bringing on Cool Borders 2 and just sharing about that time in your life. That was awesome to hear from you.
Thanks for having me, man. This was really fun, and I can't wait to live in this nostalgia for a few more days.
I love it. Well, first things first, I'll lead us into the first of two post-show segments, and that is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, and that's just where I share a fun fact with you, the guest, about the game you brought on for today.
I love it.
Now, I will say, it's not that I dropped the ball. It's just that there's not a lot of information out there about like silly details or development history about this game. But I did have one thing I wanted to highlight. I have this fact. This comes, by the way, from a website called The Cutting Room Floor, which is it's a website where it has like details about video games development history stuff that got cut out of games. And I have this titled Butterfinger Erasure. Now. And I'm really only highlighting this because it is real, and I am on a big Butterfinger streak myself, so this is really selfish. In the North American release of Cool Borders 2, there you would see billboards on some of the courses that featured an ad for Nestle's Butterfinger candy bar. Does this ring? Do you remember this at all, or is this like maybe?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I want to say yes, but I don't think I am.
I just wasn't sure if it was going to stick out super clear, but for some reason, these were removed from the European, the PAL version, likely due to trademark licensing differences between releases, which is common. I just kind of found it interesting because it's always kind of been a thing around media, and it's a huge deal nowadays with video games. But back then, it seemed like something that maybe could have snuck past and stuck around for the European version. This might be a terrible thing to introduce to you, but I'm on a Butterfinger streak because have you ever had Handel's Ice Cream? It's a new place on Hillhurst in Hollywood.
No. Oh, yes, I've seen it. It's got a window. It's kind of old-fashioned-y.
Yes. It's got like blue and white lettering, I want to say. First of all, amazing homemade ice cream that they have. And I had a craving for a Blizzard a couple months ago, and Amanda was like, I'm pretty sure there's no Dairy Queen around here. And I was like, there's got to be one. Turns out there are no Dairy Queens in LA anymore. Mm-hmm. But this place has what they call a hurricane. And I get a Butterfinger hurricane. And now I have like had to wean myself off of these because I was having it like 2 to 3 times a week. And now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just really wanted to talk about Butterfinger.
That's a reasonable amount. I think 2 to 3 times in the middle of the summer is like, yeah, you got to stay cool. You got to stay. Summer is like a time to be a little kid, in my opinion.
I like
the world has never taken summer away from me. I get summer off. That's how it's always been since school. And that's how I'm going to treat it. I'll work as little as I need to. Yes. But I'm living summer like I'm a kid. I don't care.
Yeah, I'm staying afloat and I'm getting a hurricane with Butterfinger in it.
Can I give you a little blizzard tip, which you may already know?
I would love this.
It's not Dairy Queen, but in Los Angeles they have a couple of Foster's Freeze. Have you ever been to Foster's Freeze?
I have it. I got introduced to this back in St. Louis from my family.
Okay, yes. Which I like Foster's. I think their like logo is cool, and there's like a little guy that's like a frozen ice cream thing, and I like the aesthetic. It's not a Dairy Queen, but it's about as close as you can get here.
Yes, I'm trying to think of where these. Is there one in Glendale, or I might be thinking of a different place?
There's one on Fletcher in what is that city? Glassell Park.
Oh,
and then there's one on Eagle Rock Boulevard in, of course, Eagle Rock.
Okay.
Yeah, right over by Vidiot's, if you know where Vidiot's is.
Yes. Neither of these too far for me. So, hey, I'm glad I brought up Butterfinger and ice cream today.
Me too, actually. I think I'm about ready to go get one of these things.
I think we need. I know that fall technically started the other day, but we both deserve this.
Not taking it away from me.
Not at all. That'll do it for the Fact Me by Your Game segment this week. I'll lead us into the final one, and that is the game recommendations. Ryan, this is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me by Your Name, where I am going to treat Cool Borders 2 as your passionate summer fling in Italy. It's not going to work out. So in order to help you get over this heartbreak, I've got 3 recs today that all have like a little something in common, like a little familiarity to help you sort of get over this and maybe find something that works.
Thank you. That's so nice. I am feeling so distraught.
You're very welcome. I'm here to help. The first of which, a couple of these are really down the barrel, but the first of which is if you want another cool snowboarding game of the era, but you want it to be a little more kiddie, I'll recommend another N64 snowboarding game, Snowboard Kids. Did you ever dabble with this?
No, I don't even know about it.
I completely missed it too. This game is more of like it's a lot more similar to 1080 in like the mechanics, but you play the main characters are all just like little kids as opposed to adults.
Amazing.
So there's Snowboard Kids. Your second recommendation is if you want a modern extreme sports masterpiece. Like you're like, you know what? I miss these days of being on the mountain, the virtual mountain. I want a new one. I'll recommend to you a game called Riders Republic. This game's been out for, I want to say 4 years, but it's not just snowboarding. You can do mountain biking down an area. So we got that Dave Mira stuff in there. I think you can ski too. So just more of like a modern full experience.
Love that.
And the last thing I had for you is that if you in this game, because I'll tell you, I really struggled playing this game. For the 15 minutes of a chance that I gave it, I was eating shit constantly. Is if your experience was similar and you ate shit constantly in this game and it's time where you want to give it back instead of getting it, I'll recommend a game called Road Rash. Are you familiar with Road Rash?
Yes. What is Road Rash?
It was a game where you were on like a motorcycle going through certain courses, and it was had a real focus on like hitting the other cyclist as you go by to try to knock them like off and cause a road rash in a sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know I played Road Rash, but I'm having trouble remembering it, so I will definitely go check that out after this.
It kind of looks like it's like the same camera perspective as like those old cruising games or Daytona, where it's, it's got the flat background, but they've kind of like have some fake 3D graphics in there.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll wrap up your recommendations for today. I'll just repeat these 3. We have Snowboard Kids, Riders Republic, and of course Road Rash. Rosie, that'll bring us to the end of the show.
Can I add one more recommendation from me to you?
Absolutely.
So this goes along. The one game that you said, like, is there anything that you would hurt if you didn't mention it? And it just popped in my brain because it's in the same world and it's kind of graphically and time-wise and the same as like Yo Noid, and that it's not popular and it's not good, but it is. I love it. And it was called TNC Surf. Did you ever play TNC Surf or something?
No, but I'm going to look
something
it up
like
right
that
now.
But TNC Surf is, I think, like a surf brand, like a Southern California surf brand, but it was like a game where you could basically like surf and skateboard and rollerblade.
Yes.
And it was badass.
That is amazing. I'm like, I've got some cover art here, and if this is the same game, it looks absolutely insane, but so fun.
It's really cool.
I'm seeing like a gorilla on the cover.
Oh yeah, you play as a gorilla, as a lady, as a guy, and
some kid wearing a mask.
Yes.
That's so funny.
That's bizarre.
Well, thank you for the rec. Not often I get those on my own show.
Of course.
I guess that'll end that segment and bring us to the end of the show. So before we go and let you plug whatever you'd like, thanks again for doing this. This is a blast having you on, Rosenberg.
Thanks so much for having me. This was really fun, and anytime I get to see you, buddy, it's always a nice time.
What a dream. Well, on your way out, I know we kind of plugged a couple things before earlier in the show. What do you want to plug today that the listeners can find you at?
I'm at Chosenberg on all the social media stuff, and if you want to go to biggrandewebsite.com, you can see all the stuff that my sketch and improv group Big Grande does, the aforementioned Teachers Lounge podcast, as well as some like live improvised on set type of things.
So that was so good. Was that 2 years ago
fun.
now?
I think it was. It was like kind of mid-pandemic-y. We basically did an improv show, but instead of getting a suggestion from the audience, we all got into costume, and somebody had made a set. And the first time that we saw each other's costumes or the set was when the lights went up. So we got put on stage, and then the lights went up, and we all went, okay, I guess we do this scene. And it was such a fun, surprising, comedic way to do a little bit of theater. It was really cool.
I love it. But that's all. You said biggrandewebsite.com.
biggrandewebsite.com. If you want to check out other podcasts I do, you can check out Mandog Pod, which is an improv comedy podcast. You can check out The Greatest Conversation Ever, which is just a chat podcast with me and my comedian friends being stupid, and that's about it. And Yes Also is a podcast that I produce for my friend Susie Barrett, who interviews a bunch of comedians about their history and story in comedy and where they're going and where they came from. And that's been a lot of fun. So check out any of that stuff. And I don't know, somehow find a way to give Connor $5. That would be a great thing.
And let it be you, listener, walking up on the street, handing me a $5 and not giving any context. Let it be
please.
That.
Or like a late night knock on the door, something scary. Could be something like that.
Oh, totally open to that sort of thing. Awesome. I'll put links to all that in the show notes. Yeah, all those pods are amazing. The one I've been listening to most recently is I've been catching up on Yes Also. Mm-hmm. So I just listened to the Oscar Montoya episode the other day.
He's the best. He's the best.
Former, several time guest of the show. But thank you, Ryan. I'll go ahead and just close us out with some plugs of my own. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his other great work on Instagram at Glenn with 2 N's .JAY. The show is produced, edited, and the original music that you hear is by Jeremy Schmidt. You can give him a thank you by checking out his podcast, Video Games, a Comedy Show, wherever you get yours. You can follow Call Me By Your Game all over social media. I've got links in the show notes to our Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and our TikTok. Same goes for our podcast network, Super NPC Radio. There's links to all of our stuff there. You can follow me on social media. I stream on Twitch occasionally at twitch.tv/cons-is-cool69. And lastly, if you made it to this part of the podcast and you like me and the conversations I have with people, check us out on Patreon. Over at patreon.com/supernpcradio, we have bonus video game podcasts that come out every gosh darn week. I mentioned Death Stranding earlier. By the time this episode comes out, I believe we will be about to release episode 2 of our Death Stranding series, and in this feed, that means the first episode will be out as a free preview. So if you want more bonus video game podcasts and you just can't get enough, there's stuff for you on Patreon. But that'll do it. for another episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next one.